Good evening. Once again, you're listening to The Hour of the Time, and I'm William Cooper. And I got to tell you, things are happening all over the place. We have tons of information on the Oklahoma bombing that still we are not ready to broadcast yet, nor are we ready to publish it. And our Oklahoma station chief is hard at work writing the best book that's going to come out of that, with the most truth that you're ever going to find. We generated in the intelligence service approximately 3,000 pages of reports from our operatives in the field. That's not counting the evidence and the newspaper articles and the reports such as those made by Brigadier General Benton K. Parton and others. So when we finally release what we have, ladies and gentlemen, it will be the definitive assessment of what actually happened there. As you're finding out, we were right about the Weaver incident. We were right about the Waco incident. And we were right first before anybody else, and we were the only ones who broadcast the truth first before anyone else. And we are absolutely 100% right about the Oklahoma Federal Building bombing, and we were the first to tell you the truth about that. In fact, we were the first and the only ones who found Brigadier General Parton. We were the only ones who broadcast the fact that there were 2 explosions. We were the ones who said that it was not Iraqi or Iranian or Middle Eastern terrorists, and we still maintain that John Doe number 2 is not only real, but probably was McVeigh's handler. And that's why he has sort of disappeared into the mist. They don't want him anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, things are happening again. In Canada, incredible things are happening. There may be 3 potential Wacos going on at this moment as we speak in Canada. Canada, many of you are not aware of, is already under the thumb of the New World Order. You cannot even criticize a politician. If you do, you are on your way to jail. My book, Behold a Pale Horse, is routinely intercepted at the border as contraband subversive material and is confiscated and burned. That is why we do not ship to Canada. Canadian citizens cannot broadcast on low-power FM or, for that matter, on anything else, except the normal ham radio license operators, and they are strictly monitored and controlled. They're in the process of taking the guns away from the Canadian citizens, big time. And right here in the United States, on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, the United States government is trying to take away the sacred ground known as Wounded Knee. We're going to cover these incidents. Don't go away. I'll be right back. As we speak, ladies and gentlemen, Native Canadian American Indians are under siege in 3 locations in the nation of Canada. 3 areas of Canada, ladies and gentlemen. 3 areas occupied legitimately and legally by Canadian Native American Indians are surrounded and under siege by Canadian mounted police and military, including armored personnel carriers, and you know the rest. The 3 areas are British Columbia in the Gustafson area. An armed standoff is in progress. In Ontario, there are incidental shootings taking place right now. And another incident is occurring in Nova Scotia. We have confirmed that shootings are taking place, that Indians are being killed and wounded. Indians are surrounded in places. There is a news blackout. The Canadian government is denying everything so that the world community does not know what is happening. Now, I said a long, long time ago, and I wrote it in my book, that the Indians are going to lose their land. You see, when they thought they were giving the Indians the worst areas to live on in the nation, they were actually giving them the land that had the most natural resources underneath the ground. And now they want it back. It's not only happening in Canada, ladies and gentlemen. There are things going on in this country which I will cover later in the second half of this broadcast. When people are dying, they come first in my book. It is very difficult to get information. The first indication that anything was happening came to us through our computer email system over the internet from residents and Indians who live in Canada. When I say residents, I mean it. They have no sovereign status at all. So don't call and correct me. I know what I'm talking about. Escalation, death, and widespread violence is extremely possible all across Canada. And if so, it could spread to Mexican Indians and United States Indians at various sites. The British Columbian situation already in the Gustafson Lake area is another Waco. It's already happening. And it is waiting to explode with the same type of ending. These incidents involve land rights, ladies and gentlemen, sacred burial grounds, and the extermination of Indians versus political, economic, and military self-interests of greed and power. It's the same old story. Your help is needed. We have large economic and political influence in Canada, and it needs to be used now to save these people. But it won't be used without your voice. I'm going to ask you to start calling Washington and start leaning on everybody that you can lean on and talk to everybody that you can talk to and insist that the theft of the Native American Indian lands in the country of Canada and the murder of Indians stop now. And this hits home to me because I am part American Indian and very proud of it. I know the history of the Indians in this country because I've studied it ever since the very moment that I learned that I had Indian blood. And most of the history that's been written I've discovered to be absolutely false. Just like most of the history of anybody else turns out to be absolutely false. Something must be done, and it must be done now. All of us must learn that there is one race, and that is the human race. And anybody who thinks otherwise will soon be pitted against those of another color or another race who also believe as they do. And eventually you'll have to fight it out until one or the other of you is exterminated. And I think that is absolutely pathetic. Racism is the biggest plague upon the human race that has ever occurred. Greater than the bubonic plague or AIDS or anything else that has ever attacked the human animal. Now I'm going to continue with this because you need to know about it. I wish there were some magic button that I could press somewhere, make it all go away. That's not going to happen. You see, Wounded Knee is about to repeat itself in British Columbia. The SWAT team has surrounded the men, women, and children of the Shuswap Nation, just like they did in Waco, Texas, surround the Branch Davidians. We have confirmation that Canadian armored military personnel vehicles have arrived at Gustafson Lake, and the situation is getting worse. Mediators have been denied access to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and the British Columbian Premier Mike Harcourt and the use of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and 40-member SWAT team and now armored vehicles occupied by military personnel does not demonstrate, ladies and gentlemen, any commitment from Premier Harcourt or the Canadian government to seek any kind of a peaceful solution to the situation. The defenders of Gustafson Lake comprise both Shuswap elders, traditionalists, other native and non-native defenders. It began when the Shuswap faithkeeper was hosting a sacred Sundance ceremony at the Gustafson Lake site, and 15 armed non-native men showed up and told these Indians to get off the land and threatened to hang, quote, the red niggers, end quote. After these cowboys left, more members of the Shuswap Nation and other members of other native nations came to protect the elder. Since the elder and the other people at the Sundance grounds were threatened, it was decided as necessary to arm themselves in order to protect themselves. Now the situation has escalated. Premier Harcourt has sent in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and a 40-member SWAT team, and now military armored personnel carriers. Harcourt has made public irresponsible statements which have falsely described the Gustafson Lake defenders as cult followers. They are Native American Indians practicing their traditional religious ceremonies on their own sacred ground. Chief Saul Terry, president of the Union of British Columbian Indian Chiefs, has stated, quote, the positions expressed by the Sundancers on their nation's sovereignty and aboriginal title and rights are not extremists. They are shared by many Indian peoples across this province of British Columbia as unceded Indian land, end quote. And he goes on, our nation's ownership of their respective territories, our aboriginal title has never been extinguished. We are not squatters or trespassers in our homelands. End quote. The latest information that we have is that the defenders at Gustafson Lake are prepared to die in defense of the land. They are fearful that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and military will move in and massacre the native and non-native men, women, and children who are defending their right to practice their religion on their sacred land. The non-native defenders are local residents and others who are sympathetic to the plight of the Indians. All of you should demand an inquiry. Demand that this stop. If we're not willing to allow another Waco within our borders, why should we allow one just across our northern border? And another situation is happening in eastern Canada. Last night, the Ontario Provincial Police opened fire on unarmed Ojibwe and other native supporters that were refusing to end their occupation of Ipperwash Provincial Park, located near Sarnia, Ontario. The occupation was a peaceful effort resulting in military tactics. According to the Mohawk Nation News Service, 2 native people were shot by the OPP and killed. One was reported to be a 15-year-old boy. A 15-year-old boy. The occupation involves a burial site located next to historical land that belonged to the Stony Point Ojibwe peoples. The Stony Point Ojibwe were removed, ladies and gentlemen, by the Canadian government in 1942 to make room for a military base. No treaty, no agreement, just forcibly moved. The base was to be returned to the Ojibwe people. But guess what? Nothing that has ever been taken from the Indians, whether it was promised to be returned or not, has ever in history been returned. The OPP have fully blocked off the park and all access roads. All communications have been shut down. The native people at the park are remaining and are reported to be unarmed and are adamant in their resolve not to leave. How in the world do we explain ourselves to any kind of a just God when we allow these things to happen? How can we even look ourselves in the eye? As of 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time yesterday, there was a Royal Canadian Mounted Police news conference. Control of the news has been maintained to the local area. There was a firefight between Royal Canadian Mounted Police and occupants of a red truck on the road close to the Sundance Defenders Camp. The police said thousands of rounds were fired. However, more accurate reports from more legitimate reporters tell us that there were only about 40 or 50 shots actually fired. Unfortunately, most of the reports we have are from the media, who get their information from the police. The police are saying that a red truck was disabled, probably a landmine or some such device on the road just outside the camp. Several people fled the truck and were pursued by the police, who stopped when they were shot at. They returned fire, and they say they wounded 3. The police say that one of the casualties, a woman, was seriously hurt. They offered by radio phone to come into the camp to bring the wounded people out, and were told, in the words of the reporter, quote, "piss off," end quote. Sergeant Montague and I believe the second pronunciation is correct, Sergeant Montague of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, proceeded to tell the media that one of the wounded men is an American with a criminal record and that there were several in the camp who were manipulating the situation. None of the people who have been in the camp as participants, visitors, or delegations have said anything to corroborate the police analysis. Indeed, Assembly of First Nations Chief Ovida Mercredi was very clear in his statements that the people in the camp were not criminals and deserved a hearing. In our experience with incidents of this type, the police are most probably lying. We won't know that probably for weeks, maybe even months. The police are blaming the Shuswap defenders for preventing a negotiated settlement. However, every time experienced negotiators and mediators attempt negotiation, they are refused access to anyone whatsoever. And it is also very curious, ladies and gentlemen, that almost every time a delegation appears to be making progress in that regard, a shooting incident takes place. Why? Why are the police close enough to the camp to encounter and exchange shots with the defenders? Why do police helicopters insist on being close enough to be shot at? Why don't they back off and let the elders and the leaders of the Shuswap Nation continue their talks? And contrary to police and government statements that they are attempting to reach a peaceful settlement, it is they, in every incident, who have pushed, harassed, and provoked, and yes, even terrified the defenders. The police are extremely well armed, complete with bison armored vehicles and very mobile. The defenders are few in number and are trapped within the closing ring of police armaments. And ladies and gentlemen, the people in the red truck were just going after water. On day 24, Gustafson Lake siege, the bison hunting Indians. That's a switch. That's a reference to the armored vehicles of the police and the military. Access to wood and water is cut off. Police have refused to help mothers arrange appendectomy for a daughter who is in the camp and needs surgery. Shuswap mediation team efforts, Globe and Mail biased reporting, hundreds paying tribute to Dudley George, shot by Ontario Provincial Police, counsel for the defenders Bruce Clark in Supreme Court on Tuesday, and there's a call for an independent, impartial international forum, which I don't see any evidence will ever be forthcoming. Five Indian nations, including Iroquois, Confederacy, Indians, sent a letter to Canadian Prime Minister Jean Chrétien. Bruce Clark sent a letter to the Carter Center asking for their intervention to broker a solution. The Forest Action Network and Nuxalk hereditary chiefs have joined forces to stop clear-cut logging of ancient forest land at Fog Creek on the west coast of British Columbia in sympathy with those who are under siege. The Prime Minister of Canada and the Governor General have stopped all fax receipt on this issue. If you'd like to phone the Prime Minister in Ottawa, Canada, his phone number is area code 613-992-4211. That's 613-992-4211. The Minister of Justice in the Parliament buildings in Ottawa, Canada, his phone number is 613-992-4211. 613-947-5000. 613-947-5000. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is not going to go away anytime soon. The Indians are adamant, and the police and the military are just as adamant. I don't know what the outcome will be, but I will tell you this. If we exert enough public pressure, it will not be another Waco. If we do not, the chances are that a lot of people will die. And I don't think there's any reason to allow that to happen. Nor do I think, as good, decent people, we should let it happen. A border is a line drawn on a map. These people are Americans just as sure as I am an American. Our sponsor, ladies and gentlemen, of the hour of the time is Swiss America Trading. These are people who are willing to talk to you about any method, any means that you may be able to get your hands on some real non-confiscatable, non-reportable hard assets, real money. Real money, not the phony stuff that you're carrying around in your wallet, but real money. The Constitution makes an incredible statement, and it's the most visual and overwhelming proof that I can show anybody who will instantly understand with no further prodding necessary that the Constitution for the United States of America is no longer in force. You see, it says very clearly, no state shall tender in payment of debt anything other than gold or silver coin. It also names Congress as the responsible party for, quote, coin money. It doesn't say print money. It says coin money. The law, the United States Code, the statutes at large say that money is a specific weight in measurement and purity of silver coin. It doesn't say anything about printing paper or ink or printing presses or anything else. It says a specific weight in measurement and purity of silver coin or an equivalent value of gold coin. Now, let me say that again just in case you missed it. The basis, the foundation of our economy, the only legal money is silver coin, and it makes a provision that we can accept an equivalent value in gold coin. The unit of measurement, ladies and gentlemen, is not a thing. It is a unit of measurement, like an ounce measures milk, and it's called a dollar. So you can pull as many of those phony Federal Reserve note counterfeit crapo paper things out of your wallet that you want to, that say $10 on them. And if you understand the law, you know that's a lie. Now, the law has never been changed, and the Constitution has never been changed. And if you're smart, you should be asking somebody why. And if you're not asking somebody why, you deserve the consequences of what's coming from this. No paper system has ever succeeded. All paper systems have always failed miserably. And when they failed, the entire economy, and in most instances, the nation that played with the paper, failed also. There's never been an incident in the history of the world where a hard silver or gold coin-based economy has ever failed. When the buffalo chip hits the fan, ladies and gentlemen, you'd better have some real money, because there's nobody in the world that will even give a second glance to what you've got in your pocket now. If you don't have real money, you're down the tubes. Call 1-800-289-2646. Tell them that you're a listener to the hour of the time, and you'll be given VIP treatment. Tell them that William Cooper sent you. Thank them for sponsoring this broadcast, because if they didn't have the guts to do it, there's nobody else out there that has the guts who will. And where I might keep it going for a while, I could never sustain it forever. And the tendency of patriots not to promote their own causes tells me that you would not be listening to us long. So call 1-800-289-2646. Give them your business. They give you this information. And over the last 4 years, we have imparted more information, ladies and gentlemen, worth more money than any of you combined have ever earned in your lifetime. 1-800-289-2646. Now, lest you think this is not serious, let me read you this from the Haudenosaunee Longhouse, Kahanwaki Mohawk Territory, to Jean Chrétien, Prime Minister of Canada, Premier Mike Harcourt, British Columbia, Premier Mike Harris, Ontario, and I quote verbatim, "Be advised this date, September 7th, 1995, that any further violence committed against our sovereign Turtle Island brothers and sisters of the Shuswap Nation at Gustafson Lake, British Columbia, our Stoney Nation at Ipperwash Park, Ontario, will be answered in kind. Those directly and indirectly responsible for the murders of our brothers, one 15-year-old boy at Ipperwash, Ontario, will be identified and held accountable for their actions. Those directly and indirectly responsible for the beatings of our women and children at Ipperwash, Ontario, will be identified and held accountable for their actions. We have remained silent for some time now in the hopes that your governments could finally come to terms honorably with our rights to sovereign control of our lands and destiny. You have always said that all you need is just a little bit more time, as if 500 years is not enough. And what have you given to our people with that little more time? You have given to us more guns, more bullets, more violence, more threats, more empty fascist rhetoric about your law and order, all at the expense of justice for our people. Even your self-government package and policing agreements drip with venomous intentions you have towards our people and their sovereignty. They are silent on our rights. They scream out your intentions to extinguish us. They are Dr. Kevorkian's tools for assisted suicide that will kill us as surely as your guns and bullets. And so we remain silent no more. And so we advise you that we will not stand idly by while you continue to brutalize our people. For the civilized record, first comes the truth, then comes justice, then comes the mutually nourishing strength that leads to a living law and order. Only in a brutally repressive fascist state does law and order stand alone, like police state tanks and bullets. The latest victims of your fascist state are Dudley George, shot in the back, Nicholas Cottrell, 15, unarmed, executed with a bullet to the back of his head. Signed by the Mohawk Nation's Six-Nation Confederacy, Kanawaki Territory. And now, what's happening in the United States? I've received this letter from a man named Black Eagle. I'm writing on behalf of my Lakota family and friends who live on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, specifically the traditional community members near Wounded Knee. There's a bill currently in committee in both the Senate and House that would turn our sacred memorial and site of Wounded Knee into a national park, removing the land from the reservation and placing it in trust of the U.S. government. This is the site of and mass burial from the 1890 massacre of over 300 innocent Lakota men, women, and children by the 7th Cavalry, Custer's old unit, in retaliation for the defeat handed Custer by the Lakota and Cheyenne nations at Little Bighorn. We need your help to make sure these bills are defeated because we want to keep our land, keep our memorial, keep our sacred place where many Lakota people come to pray and remember. We do not want a national park, a visitor center, an amphitheater, parking lots, and a lot of traffic in this burial area disturbing the bones and spirits of our ancestors. The Senate bill is S-382. It was sent to the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs. The House bill is H.R. 877. That's S-382 and H.R. 877. H.R. 877 was sent to the House Committee on Resources. Both bills were introduced February the 9th, 1995 by the congressional delegation from South Dakota. The bills are being supported by the tribal councils, but not by the residents and traditional members of Wounded Knee community, nor the reservation in general. In fact, the traditional members and residents were not even consulted prior to these bills being introduced. Yet these residents will be the ones most impacted, and some will even lose their land and home sites to the national park. And once again, we'll have to move to some new designated home for them, decided by somebody in a city that they've never even seen. Please join your voice to ours. I can send you more information if you would like. And he gives the names and addresses of the Senate and House committee members, and he signs it Black Eagle. And there's more, a lot more. Black Eagle also sends this, and it was written by Black Eagle and Gerald Ice. The Murder of the Wind of Peace, it's entitled. It was the 29th day of the moon of popping trees, December 1890. Peace was sleeping within the warm winter wind under the murderous eyes of Gatling and Hotchkiss guns, which were dug into the ridges above the Lakota encampment. Chief Spotted Elk, Bigfoot was the name soldiers gave him, flying the white flag of truce within his encampment, was dying from pneumonia. His people were dying from fear of the white soldiers who had come to take revenge for the defeat of their unit, the 7th Cavalry, at Little Bighorn, in the moon when the chocacherries are ripe, June 1876. All the soldiers needed was the smallest excuse to begin the massacre. A single shot, according to a reporter on the scene, was fired from the soldiers, and with that the smallest excuse was manufactured. When the rain of ammunition ceased, over 300 Lakota people lay dead from gunfire, cannon fire, or manual butchering within the encampment and within adjacent ravines up to 2 miles away. The dead were Lakota men who had been disarmed before the weapons fire began. Women, many with babies in arms, are waiting to be born, and children. The soldiers walked away from their crime against humanity and left the dead where they lay. That night, the sky cried snow, and the warm winter wind of peace was supplanted by the cold winter wind of grief. For 4 days, the dead lay where they were, frozen into grotesque shapes of lifelessness. Finally, the soldiers came and loaded the dead like cordwood in wagons and hauled their loads to hastily dug mass graves where the dead were thrown in, the bodies of men, women, and children whose spirits walked the encampment and ravines wailing. The mass graves were filled and the soldiers left. 18 Congressional Medals of Honor for bravery were awarded to the soldiers who participated in that heinous murder against a people who had been disarmed and did not even fight back. They were given these medals for their parts in fighting the allegedly hostile war parties attacking them that day. The spirits of the slain continue their walking and wailing. Red willow in great profusion, grown from the blood of all those who fell along the banks of the creek that day, still grows thickly along Wounded Knee Creek. Peace never again slept within the winds that blew along Wounded Knee Creek. The massacre of Wounded Knee became a symbol for my people, the Lakota Nation, of the lies and deceit of the Great White Father in Washington and the United States government. Their words of encouragement and promises of help and peace were seen for the malevolent intent hidden behind the facade. As more and more land promised to us forever was taken away on the whims of Congress, our place to live became smaller and our pain and confusion grew. The mass graves at Wounded Knee became a symbol to us to never forget and never to trust again. The voices of our slain relatives can still be heard, crying out from soil, the waters, the air, and we vow time and time again to never forget, to be strong, to help our nation heal, and to live well again. Now the United States government wants to take from us 1,800 acres, including lands and all mineral rights, water rights, easements, permanent structures, and fixtures on such land, to turn our sacred site, the burial grounds, and the historic landscape of Wounded Knee into a national park. The government claims that it wants to do this so that it can express its commitment to acknowledge and learn from our history, including the Wounded Knee Massacre, in order to provide a proper foundation for building an ever more humane, enlightened, and just society for the future. Quoted from the enabling legislation. And I, William Cooper, say if that's what they say in the enabling legislation, then no one has ever learned anything from history. To do so, the U.S. government wants to remove and relocate any individuals and families living within that 1,800 acres and restore the landscape to the government's vision of 1890 historical conditions. Any buildings and fixtures currently within the 1,800 acres that are not found to coincide with that vision will be destroyed. The government also wants to build a visitor's center, an amphitheater, roads and trails, and to relocate the 3 main roads that intersect at the current Wounded Knee Memorial and 1 mass grave site. These activities are wholly inappropriate for a cemetery and burial site that will disturb the spirits of the people buried there. The enabling legislation to create the national park was introduced simultaneously to both the United States Senate and United States House of Representatives on February the 9th, 1995, by the congressional delegation from South Dakota. After introduction, the Senate Bill S-382 was referred to the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs, where it remains at this time. Similarly, the House Bill, H.R. 877, was referred to the House Committee on Resources. Then on February 15, 1995, H.R. 877 was referred to the House Subcommittee on National Parks, Forests, and Lands, where it remains at this time. The opinions of the residents of Wounded Knee and the members of the Wounded Knee Landowners Association were not solicited prior to this bill being written or submitted, nor were we invited to or notified of the 1 congressional hearing that occurred on this issue. We stand opposed to the creation of this national park for all of the reasons given here and many others. We are asking you to help us in our fight to save this sacred site from development. Please join your voice with ours in opposing the creation of this national park. Write your representatives and senators. Write the members of the Congressional Committee and Subcommittee currently reviewing the bills. It is most effective to generate a large number of brief email postings or postal service letters that simply state little more than the following. Quote, please vote no on H.R. 877 and S-382. Signed, your name, your address, and your phone number. Please vote no on H.R. 877 and S-382. Write letters to the editors of your local newspapers. For more information, please contact Pamela and Gerald Ice. Pamela and Gerald Ice. Post Office Box 199. That's P.O. Box 199, Wounded Knee, South Dakota. Once more, for more information, please contact Pamela and Gerald Ice. Post Office Box 199, Wounded Knee, South Dakota, 57794. Or you can call 605-867-1591. That's 605-867-1591. Now, whenever I've been able to, I've tried my best to help the Indians who don't have much help and never get the press that they should get. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's a concerted effort going on across this country to deplete their numbers and take away their land. Remember, this whole continent once belonged to them. I'm not so foolish as to think that anybody's ever going to give it back to them, nor at this stage of the game do I think that that would be a desirable thing to do. But I think our history of betraying and killing and starving and murdering these people has got to stop sometime, and it better stop now. Haven't we stolen enough from them? Let them have what they have. Leave them alone. I would appreciate your help in this, ladies and gentlemen. Not too long ago at Pine Ridge, the United States government told those people that they had to have all their children vaccinated in a blind test for hepatitis A and hepatitis B. When I heard that, I went through the roof, because all the testing that has ever needed to be done was done on hepatitis A and B vaccine years and years ago. The only reason to con these people into accepting such a test is if they were going to give them something else in that vaccine. And so I communicated with the people at the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, and I sent them copies of my book, and I told them to read specifically the chapters concerning population control. And they refused to allow their children to be vaccinated in the blind test. And they survived that attempt. In another incident just not too far away in the state of New Mexico, Indians came to me and told me that people were getting sick on their reservation and their hair was falling out. When they told me their hair was falling out, I knew that they had radiation sickness, but the government and the local officials denied it. We sent intelligence service members to the reservation to look for possible sources of radiation, and they took Geiger counters with them. They found shallow metal dishes in the streams. In the center was welded a very small diameter rod which stuck up just above the water. When they pulled these rods up, they saw that the metal dish contained small round pellets which caused the needle on the Geiger counters to jump right off the scale. So I know exactly what I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen. We showed the Indians what to look for, and they eliminated these things from their property and buried them very deep. No help could be had from any official person whatsoever. Think about these things, and think about the world that you want to leave for your children, and then get up off your butts and do something with me and everybody else who really cares about the human race, the only race that there is to care about. Good night, and God bless you all.